Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Credit Chat. I'm Rod Griffin, Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian, and this is Credit Chat. Hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and you're back at it and going strong. Had a great break with my family and friends, and happy to be here. Big Boy 999, thanks for joining. Ms. ZD4, good to see you again. If you have questions about credit reporting, credit scoring, fraud and ID theft, any of those kinds of things that Experian might have expertise in and that I might be able to help answer your questions for, that's why I'm here. I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so answering questions you have, because if you have a question, I guarantee you others have the same question. We want to make sure that we answer those questions for you and help you use your credit report and your credit scores as a financial tool. They should not be a financial barrier. And you should be able to know when you walk into your lender exactly what they're going to see, exactly what you should expect. And we want to make sure that you are able to use that credit report to your advantage. So that's why we're here. HSN with lots of ones. Thanks for joining. I probably wouldn't get them all right. Penny, Monique, thanks for being here. And thanks for joining the Credit Chat. Talk about credit during the holidays. Oh, we can do that. Certainly. We did, Experian actually did a holiday survey and have found some interesting things. One, a lot of people, of course, plan to use credit. But a lot of people also hope to improve their credit scores by the new year, and those are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. So we know that people are saying they're going to spend more this holiday season than they did last year by quite a lot, and which was a bit surprising. Last year, I think they spent about $700, and this year they're talking about more like $1,600. Is what people told us they plan to spend, and so that's the increase, and I think we're seeing that. Some of the preliminary findings and the early results of Black Friday and Cyber Monday say that they're record years, and so we're seeing that spending going up. I think that's a good sign. I think people are saying that they're confident that the job market's strong, that they're able and comfortable to spend more. At the same time, we hope they're not taking on debt, because that can be the financial problem. Credit's a financial tool, debt's a financial problem. One of the things that I'm often asked is, should I apply for new credit cards to get the discounts when I'm shopping for the holidays? And my answer to that is, pick one or two and that will give you the best benefits, whether that's the biggest discount at the moment that you're shopping, or perhaps a card that's going to give you continuing benefits. So if it's a store you shop at frequently throughout the year and you can get a discount, maybe you apply for that card and use it. But don't apply everywhere you go. Lots of applications for credit it can be a sign of risk. So it's better to have a plan. Pick the top couple that are going to be the most benefit to you. If you get that discount and then decide you don't want to use the card, call and have them close it. And quite often, if you do that, you'll find that the account will never appear on your credit report, because it usually takes a full billing cycle before the account itself is reported. So you may not even see it on your report. So that's an option. But if you're going to use the account, make sure if you open it, you use it periodically so there's activity, because scores will need to see that activity. So be aware of that. But it's really interesting. We had people tell us that they would be willing to risk identity theft to get the best deals. The problem with that is you may end up getting scammed. That's the story I tell is I have three grown daughters, and they wanted to get each other these expensive handbags for Christmas a couple of years ago, and they thought they found a screaming deal online, and so they bought them. When they got them, they were screaming because they were counterfeit. They didn't work with a reputable online source, and that ended up causing all sorts of difficulty. They got lucky; they got their money back, but they had to call the manufacturer of the legitimate manufacturer of the handbags, who intervened and went to that source and said, "Look, there's going to be all sorts of problems if you don't stop selling these and refund these people's money." So my girls are very resourceful and determined, so they got lucky. But at the same time, they used credit cards to make that purchase so that they were protected from fraud. So think about that. If you're going to be shopping at the holidays, using a credit card can be advantageous, especially if you're shopping online, in terms of protecting you from fraud. If fraud does occur, your losses are limited to $50 when you report that fraud. In most cases, they waive that obligation as well. So, and then you can turn around and pay the balance in full. So you're not taking on debt. So use credit as a financial tool. How's that Ms. DD4, is that enough? We could talk more about the holidays. It's a great time for identity thieves. It's their big shopping season too, so be careful about how you use your credit when you're applying for credit, providing information. Make sure you know why you're providing the information you're giving. Make sure that if you're standing in line, that the person behind you doesn't have their phone out with the video camera recording and capturing your credit card numbers, your social security numbers, your ident. From your driver's license, whatever it might be. So you need to be aware and protect yourself. Don't leave documents or receipts or things like that in your car. Don't leave your purse or your wallet sitting in the car when you're parked at the mall. All sorts of things that you need to think about during the holidays. And I hear from police officers say that it's a high time of season to break into cars, not to steal the radios like they used to when I was young, but to steal identifying information out of your car. So they want that information because then they can use it to commit fraud, make their own holiday purchases, and leave you stuck with the bill. So be careful about that. Bronze Angel, is my score algorithm affected by your neighborhood or race? Absolutely not. Credit scores and insurance scores likewise are not affected by race, by religion, by age, by gender. That has nothing at all to do with credit scores. Credit scores look at the information in your credit report, the account information specifically, and use that to determine the risk of lending to you, or in the case of insurance, they look at the risk of you being able to repay or make the premium payments on time. Credit scores do not look at the identifying information from your credit report in any way. It doesn't affect scores at all. So no is the answer to that. They're looking at, do you pay your bills on time? Do you manage your debts well? And so it eliminates those kinds of prejudices and biases, which is a benefit on the whole to scores. It takes away that, I know your dad, so you'll probably be a good risk, or I know your brother, and this is me, my family, I know your brother, so probably not. If you live in a small town like I did, actually, my brother's a banker, so it would probably be good for me. But that's the kind of thing we would hear. We'd go in and okay, we know your family, so you're okay, and I know their family, so no, well, that's not right. It's about how the individual manages their debts, regardless of any of those other issues. So that's what credit scores help do. They make it more objective, and they take away those kinds of judgments that shouldn't be part of those decisions. Just filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Brock Farron, how long before I can buy a home, and best way to get credit up to buy a home? So the bankruptcy Chapter 7 public record will be on your report for 10 years from the filing date. That's going to drag down your scores that entire time. Maybe not over time less, but it will be a detriment to those scores. The best things you can do, make sure that if you have one account, or you can open a small account with a small credit limit, just a few $100s, and then make a small purchase of $10 or $20 every month. Turn around and pay that in full. Don't carry a balance, so there's activity. You'll begin to build at least one account with positive history, and over time, as the accounts and the debts that were included in that bankruptcy fall off of the credit report, they will be offset by that positive information, and that's going to help you start to build that score again. Also think about using Experian Boost. So if you go to Experian.com/boost, you can add your positive cell phone payments, your positive utility payments to your credit report, and that can help begin to improve your scores over time, so that because you're getting credit for making responsible payments for those credit-like agreements, and we've been able to show that that's a good sign of risk, and so will help you rebuild over time. Bankruptcy is, as you know, a last resort, but life happens, and lenders understand that, and over time you can rebuild. So your credit history isn't permanent. You can reestablish it, rebuild it. In terms of how long you'll have to wait to buy a house, like that depends on the lenders and their policies. There was, for a time, I believe, a 3-year delay or period where you couldn't apply for a new mortgage after bankruptcy. I'm not sure that that's still in effect, but the lenders will decide. The other thing to think about is you will probably get offers for credit pretty quickly. The question to ask yourself is that the kind of credit you want? Because what usually happens is they'll offer you credit, but it's at extremely high interest rates, or with extremely high fees, or both, or very limited use, or a combination of those things. And so it may be best to wait, if you can, to apply for new credit. until your scores begin to rebound. And that will take time. Yes, you'll steal your holiday gifts too. That's absolutely right. Put things in the trunk or where people can't see them. It's really scary. Florida Cop 911, thanks for joining. And does Boost work monthly or only once? It's monthly. So what happens is you go into Experian Boost and enroll. When you do, we'll give you at the beginning of that process a free FICO 8 score so you'll know where you're starting. And then you tell us which accounts you want to include that are paid through your checking account, your savings account, what we call a demand deposit account. So you can't pay them with a credit card, or we can't find them. But if you go, what we'll do is we work with a company called Finicity, who then it goes to your bank, has access. You're giving us permission to have access to your checking account to find that payment each month, not looking at the whole account, but rather just that finding that payment and pulling that in each month. And when you first enroll, we'll go back as far as 24 months and capture those payments and put them in your report as an account. So you'd have a cell phone payment account. You might have an electricity payment account. You might have a natural gas payment account, for example, that could be in your report. If we find accounts as we're going through that process that we believe that we know we can add that you didn't tell us about, we'll initially say, hey, we found these. Do you want to add them? You can tell us yes or say no, and we won't. And that's the last we'll look at those. And we update that information just like a regular credit account each month going forward. So you would build that payment history over time going forward. Most people are seeing, say most, about two out of three people are seeing an increase in their scores, and typically between 10 and 13 points, something like that. If people have a thin credit file, so fewer than 5 accounts, they're building credit, we're seeing average increases of about 19 points. So it's really helping, and it's monthly, so it's not just one time. You're actually telling us, I want to add this as an account to my report. The other benefit to that is when anyone gets your credit report, if the score feeds that information into it, it will use that information in the score. So it's not dependent on any one credit score because it's part of your report, just like a regular credit account. Is it true that student loan debt is erased after 10 years or 20? And that's one of those, it depends. It seems like that's answered everything. It depends on the student loan. So is it a private student loan, a government guaranteed student loan? Also depends on your career field, as I understand it. And are you working in a field where student loans will be forgiven as a result of your service? So, I think there are teachers in underserved areas, doctors, other healthcare providers, nurses, that sort of thing. There may be others. I'm not an expert in that area, but there are criteria you have to meet under the federal student loan standards, and when that time frame meets and all of that. So I would go to the federal student aid, whomever that might be, check with them or the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, and they should be able to provide details on exactly what those criteria are for having student loan debt forgiven. Unfortunately, I did not qualify. So I was a journalism major, was a newspaper reporter in a little bitty town, but so I did deferment and hardship forbearance and consolidation. I used every tool that was available to make sure I paid them off, and eventually I did. It took a long time, but it did. I use this credit boost, but my bank always disconnects. Is it this app or the bank? It sounds bad. Probably the bank. It may be policy. It may be something they need to look at. I would ask your bank. I would also provide feedback to Experian through your membership account, through that account. If you can, let us know who the bank is and what the issues are, because I've run into that a couple of times where the banks somehow don't make that connection. They need additional documentation, those sorts of things. We're learning as we go too. We're adding banks all the time, and it's gradually increasing those numbers. The bank I work with wasn't in the list when it started, and our CEO asked me if I boosted, and I said, well, I tried, but I couldn't. He said, what? So, well, my bank wasn't part of the list. He said, who was it? And we got that taken care of. Apparently, I don't know. But, I was like, oops, I didn't. So it's growing. That list is growing. Vassar 111, thanks for joining. Nathan Dahlia, thanks for being here. Glad to be talking about credit, personal finance, all those kinds of cool things, sharing information with each other. If you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat. I try to be here at 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern on Tuesdays and Thursdays. to answer your questions about credit reports, credit scores, fraud, and ID theft. So we can help share information with one another and hopefully help you be more financially healthy and help you improve your credit history and your credit score so you can achieve your financial goals. That's what it's really all about. Your credit report should be a financial tool. It shouldn't be a financial barrier if you understand how it works and you manage credit well and know the things you need to know. So that's what this is all about. So thanks for your question. If you ask a question I didn't answer it or I missed it, I try to scroll and check, but if I miss it, please repost. We try to make sure we do that too. Another interesting thing that just came out is Experian's annual prediction on data breaches and identity theft risk. So you should be seeing more about that in the media. One of the things we predict, and this is like everything looking into a crystal ball, so it doesn't always happen, but we're looking at things that are much more highly likely. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating was that there are more and more public Wi-Fi networks. So in cities, in towns, you can be on the street and the city itself will have Wi-Fi feeds, for example. And our prediction is that identity thieves will begin using drones to fly up high out of sight, but with antennas essentially that can capture Wi-Fi signals. And for anyone who's logging in through a public network who doesn't use a VPN, isn't securing their phones or their mobile devices, they may be able to capture your identifying information if you're using your phone for personal financial transactions, banking, credit cards, that sort of thing. They may be able to use drones that connect to those public Wi-Fi networks to steal your identity and your banking information. So kind of scary to think about that and what they may be able to do with technology. So there's technology that's really good, technology that's being used for evil, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, and really bad things to hurt people. So we're trying to stop those things and make people aware and to learn about it. So be careful. Another thing to think about during the holidays, if you're traveling, if you're shopping, you're using public Wi-Fi networks, be very careful about what you share, about connecting to those networks, about maybe using a VPN, a virtual private network, to protect your information before you do any kind of financial transactions, because the bad guys are out there and they're trying to get your information. So really kind of interesting things to hear from our experts that I learn from all the time. H_OR, thanks for 0R, thanks for joining. Or is that an O? Mustafa Aksut 2, thanks for joining and being part of the chat. Baster 111. Parker Sasquatch, thanks for joining. If you Yayo, that kid, thanks for joining. May King, good to see you. Thanks for joining as well. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I know we're all kind of coming off the Thanksgiving holiday and probably a little sluggish. I know I'm trying to recover. It's only Tuesday. I'm getting there. Had my last piece of pumpkin pie Sunday night, so it's still recovering. But thanks for being part of the chat. Again, if you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat. I try to be here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern. We're on Credit Chat on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern. We haven't missed a Credit Chat in the last like 6 years. So, that's amazing. I was talking to Michael Delgado, who's our social media manager. One of our credit chats is scheduled for Christmas Day. He's going to be on. I don't know if I'm going to be. I'm going to try to be on at least for a while because we want to continue that string too on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern on Twitter. So watch for that. I can real quick here. I'm trying to look at my screen, but I have the wrong mouse. If I remember what we're talking about tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking about ways to protect yourself against identity theft. So absolutely crucial, especially this time of year. So thanks for all of the hearts. Thanks for being part of the chat. And feel free to ask any questions. We still have some time. D. Breezy, thanks for joining. And feel free to ask any questions you have about credit reports, credit scores, fraud, and ID theft. With the holidays now upon us, we're all shopping, looking for those best deals. Cyber Monday being yesterday, thinking about how we shop online is hugely important. Make sure you know who you're working with, and look for all of the security indicators, the HTTPS, the padlock, all of those sorts of things. But most important, know who you're working with. Another thing to think about when you're watching websites is what they call spoofing. You'll see a site that looks exactly like a legitimate store front on a web page, but they'll change very subtle things, and they can dupe you into doing business with someone who's a fraudster. So be very careful about who you're working with, and be thoughtful. It makes shopping at the holidays seem scarier than it used to, but it can still be. It's still a fantastic experience. You can still find great deals, but you just have to be aware, and I think that's what we want people to understand. So, let me see. Yeah, well, if Lukey is here and Satan's learning something wonderful. But not a religious channel either way. So, my philosophy is, if there are trolls and lurkers, people can do silly things and say things, but if they're here and they happen to accidentally learn something, fantastic. I talk to our people, and I've been called lots of things, most of it good. So I don't worry about it too much. People can call me whatever they want. What upsets me is when they talk about other people who can't have a voice back, because I can respond. But if people start talking about other people, and there's my dog, my wife might be home. So she's, my little Bella is excited that my wife's home. But say what you will about me. I can defend myself or just ignore your comments. But if you're talking about other people and people who can't respond, that upsets me. I think that's petty and stupid. So, can't fix stupid. So thanks. That's my commentary on that issue for today. We're really here to talk about credit reports and credit scores, fraud and identity theft, all of those things that are important to us during the holidays, especially. We want the holiday season to be a good one. We want the new year to be a good year. And we all know the bills come in January, and we don't want them to be big ones or ones we can't manage. So that's the whole idea, is let's talk about how we can make good decisions. Are we budgeting? Are we making a list and checking it twice? Making sure that we're making good decisions, and then know what's in your credit report. Get that report. It's free once every 12 months at annualcreditreport.com. You can get a free report from Experian. You can get free information if you download our app. Get a free report. Lots of places to get free reports and scores, but you should know them, know what's in it, because you can't do anything about it until you know what's there. So make sure you check that report. Use it as part of your planning and your financial management. You shouldn't be afraid of what's there. Memduduimus. I've tried. I probably got that wrong too, but thanks for joining, being part of the chat. And if you have any questions, again, a few more minutes. We're all recovering from Thanksgiving and trying to get back up to speed and thinking about getting out and shopping and all of those things. So, it's really, now is the time to be thinking really hard about how we're spending money, how we're planning to spend our money, and how we're using credit. Are we using it well, using it wisely? Because again, and I say it all the time, credit's a financial tool, debt's the financial problem. You can use credit in ways that don't take on debt. Ironically, we heard from a lot of people in the holiday survey that said they would be willing to take a personal loan for their holiday expenses. And we also know from other studies and surveys that a lot of those people who take on loans and debt now will still be paying for it next year. And that's the worst circumstance. You don't want to be paying for this year's holidays next year when you're starting to shop again, because things just get harder and harder. So now we want to make sure that we work together, share information to help each other make good decisions, and have a wonderful new year after a fabulous holiday season. So Ask James, thanks for joining, being part of the chat today. I wonder if that's my James in the UK. If so, I can't answer questions about the UK, but James Jones over there might be able to if he's on. But feel free to ask any questions. I'll hang out another 5, 6, 7 minutes, and we can chat some more. There's always more information I can share. B. Hiles one, thanks for joining, being part of the chat today. Experian is actually a global company. Our headquarters are in London, England. Your U.S. Credit history never leaves the United States. I work for Experian North America. Our headquarters in Costa Mesa, California, and we do not share credit reports across national boundaries. I always, I've shared the story of our current CEO. When he moved here from the UK, his Experian credit report didn't come with him. He had to start over, just like everybody else. And so we do not share credit reports across national boundaries for lots of reasons. The laws are different. The information in credit reports is different. The way that they make identification or match identities is different. So it's very difficult to do. And so we don't. If I move to Canada, would I start fresh? Mr. Krabs, yes. And if you move to Canada, Experian does not have a credit reporting operation in Canada, oddly. TransUnion and Equifax do, our competitors, but we do not transfer those credit histories across national boundaries. So if you move to Canada, you wouldn't. I've also talked with some Canadian compatriots who they like snowbirds that would want to buy property in the South in the U.S. and stay there in the wintertime and have difficulty because they don't have a U.S. credit report, and there's no way to transfer that legally. The Canadian laws are quite different than U.S. laws, and they don't transfer via TransUnion either or Equifax because the Canadian laws are so different. The way the credit reporting systems work is different. So they don't transfer across national boundaries. That's good, I think, in most cases. But as the world becomes smaller and people travel, we may need to be looking at how we overcome that barrier and make sure that we can transfer information if it's beneficial to the consumer, but also complies with all the laws and regulations requirements. So it's a challenge. Once a default is served 6 years on your file, how long does it take for your report to go back up? So Pennyboy69, if you have a late payment, it will stay on the report for 7 years from the date of that late payment. Once that falls off, depending on the history of that account and what else has happened with your credit report. So if you had one late payment, never had anything else in any of your other accounts that was a problem, and it fell off, the next time your credit report's requested, and a score is calculated, you would probably see the score increase because of that negative information coming off. However, if that's the only thing, you have one late payment, over time that becomes less important anyway, so your score would probably build up. The thing to understand is that everything in the report's related. So over time, if you have a late payment on one account, it may fall off, but if you've had issues with other accounts, late payments or high balances, they may offset that over time. So it's about managing all of your accounts well and looking at how they're all interrelated. And so sometimes, talk to people and say, well, the late payment fell off on this account, but my score didn't go up. But the issue is they've maxed out their credit cards on 2 cards and that offset. So you have to look at everything. So that's by way of saying it depends. So it depends on what's happening with your history. Depends on how severe the negative information is to late payments. Is it a 30-day late payment, or is it 90 days late, or is it a collection account? All of those things can make a difference. But once it comes off the report, it's off the report, and it will no longer affect credit scores when they're calculated. Your friend's taking care of grandma's planning to transfer all debt to his grandma's card before she dies. Yeah, July boy, that's a pretty low life thing to do. Could be fraud too. Not sure. I think the credit card companies might want to know about that. It's his debt. He's responsible for it. My view, not necessarily those of Experian, but that's my perspective. Can you share some ways in which one can leverage a favorable credit rating? Sure, all day midway. So if you have a good credit history, it's not just about applying and getting new loans or new credit cards. That's what we think about, obviously. So we think about credit reports and scores helping you get new credit accounts. So buying a car, buying a house, getting a credit card. Those are kind of the common things. Now think about having a good credit score. And when we talk about credit rating, we're talking about credit scores, but I also talk about having a good credit history separate from the scores because they're two different things. If you have good credit scores, it can help you get better rates for your insurance because it shows that you are less likely to make a claim. Doesn't mean you're less likely to have a wreck or more likely. It just means you're less likely to make a claim. It's a financial issue. It can help you, if you have good scores, pay lower security deposits if you're leasing an apartment or a lower deposit or setup fees and charges for utility service when you move into a new apartment or new townhome or new home. So people don't think about that. Having good credit can help because if you are, say, renting a car, they need to see that you have in most cases, a credit account to hold that reservation. Doesn't mean you have to pay for it, but having an account will show that that's secure. You're not going to drive away with the car. So having a good credit history is essential to having that account. So that can help you in terms of just things you need to do in life. You need to rent a car or reserve a hotel room or those sorts of things. Having good credit means you can use credit accounts when you're shopping online, which can protect you from fraud and reduce your risk of fraud loss. If you have a good credit history, it can be helpful in applying for a job. Employers never ever get credit scores. I always stress that. Employers do not see scores. But if you're applying for a job as an accountant or in a role that manages a company's money, they'll likely check your credit report, a limited version. And if you're managing your credit well, it can help you qualify for that position. So it can help in that way. So lots of reasons you want a good credit history. It can save you money over time. It can help you take advantage of holiday shopping sales. If you need to apply for a credit card or two and save 20 or 30% of your purchase, and you can qualify right on the spot. Save that money, pay it off, and not carry any debt. So lots of reasons you need to have good credit. For most of us, we aren't going to be able to buy a house using cash. Most of us can't save 150 or 200 or 300 or $500,000 to buy a house. If you have good credit, it makes that opportunity available to you. If you think about even simpler, or even maybe not simpler is not the right word, but for people who have no credit, what we call credit invisible, where they have thin credit files, so limited credit history, it can affect their access to lower cost financial tools. So having a good credit history can help break the cycle of payday lending or predatory, not so much payday lending, but predatory lending, things that trap people in high interest, high fee, high cost situations, and can help them gain access to lower cost, more traditional banking and more efficient banking services. Lots of reasons to have a good credit history. That's different than saying carrying debt. And I say that over and over. Having a good credit history, having good credit is different than debt. Credit's a financial tool if you use it well. Debt's a financial problem, and that's what I say over and over, said it over and over today. How does one credit card in Canada? SS number is the same, right? So you would have your own identifying information in Canada. Their credit reporting systems would then match you similarly to what we do here in the U.S., but and in North America. But they have their own systems, and their banks look at risk. They use credit scores. They do the same kinds of things, but the way they identify their residents or citizens who have a credit history is different than it is in the U.S. And the things that they can include in a credit report may be different. I'm not an expert on Canadian credit history, so can be different. Need to pay for a GIC worth the credit limit of that card first. Yeah. Hey, James, good to see you. And I don't know if I'm a master. I've just been doing it a long time. But I keep telling you, you need to start doing this too, because James Jones is my counterpart in the UK, and he's brilliant too. So he can answer any questions you have in the UK. The ZD4 is not stealing. He's taking care of her and had to leave his job. Healthcare won't help. Extenuating circumstances. And so, when and I apologize for making that statement. If it's debt related to providing health care for his grandmother, it may be justified. And that's, I apologize speaking without all of the information. That's important, and I apologize for that. So look, and so it's different. If you're just saying, look, I'm going to transfer my debt that I've accrued because I don't want to pay it, that's one thing. If it's expense associated with providing care for someone else, that's a different story. So those charges may be absolutely relevant. So I apologize for misspeaking, making a judgment before I had all of the facts. I should never do that. Is ClearScore better than Experian? No, it's different. So Experian's a credit reporting company. ClearScore is a company that's alternative data, alternative scoring, essentially. Different. Experian provides credit histories We also work with companies like FICO and VantageScore and others. They do scoring and algorithm and analytics. We have a decision analytics company. So different things, different kinds of scores. Doesn't make them better, not necessarily worse. We've been around a lot longer and have more data and more a longer track record. So we'll look at it that way. How long will it take to turn a 620 into a 750 plus? Jameson AMG. It depends. So, it's always the question. The lower your score, the longer it's typically going to take. But it also depends on what your situation is. Is the 620 the result of just having a short credit history and very little experience with credit? Or is it the result of mismanaging credit in the past and having delinquencies, late payments, collection accounts, bankruptcy, those sorts of things? It makes a big difference. If you're building credit for the first time, you're using tools like Experian Boost and managing your credit well, it will take less time than if you've had a bankruptcy or other issues that you're trying to recover from because you have that longer history and you have to, it just takes longer. So, and you're reestablishing. So it depends. And it's really hard to say exactly how long because, again, it really does depend. It depends on the scoring system, depends on your history and your unique situation. So it makes it really hard. Am I CEO? I am not the CEO. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian North America. My name's Rod Griffin, if you're just joining. And I'm here to answer your questions. Paying over the minimum balance steadily and letting the card company make interest raises credit. Paying in full is the best thing you can do. If you pay the balance in full, you do not have to pay interest. All you're doing if you leave any remaining interest is pay, or remaining balance is pay interest on that. It's costing you more money. So, that's, I hear people say you need to pay 95% of your balance to help your credit scores. That's absolutely not true. You need to pay the balance in full each month. If you can, that's the best thing from a credit reporting scoring perspective. You'll still show a balance. The balance that shows in your report is typically the balance on your billing statement. So you would still probably see a balance, but you wouldn't have to pay interest on it. So it'd save you money. So that's what I would recommend if you can. If someone gives you credit, is that a good thing? So if you're asking, do they add you as an authorized user? That can be a good thing, can help you build credit. It means you have their authorization, their permission to use the account to make charges. As long as you don't abuse that privilege and they don't get into trouble with the account, it can help you build a credit history. If you are an authorized user, you're not responsible for the debt. If that account becomes delinquent, becomes late, has late payments, that sort of thing, we'll remove it from the authorized users report, not from the primary holders, but from the authorized user report. So fairly safe. If they add you as a joint account holder, that means you're responsible for the debt too. So it would affect both of you equally. But they don't want to keep you owing them, which is why they love customers constantly paying interest. Well, I mean, it's a decision we make, and that's why I say credit's a financial tool. If you use it well, it works to your advantage. You can take advantage of incentives, so cash back. We were talking about, how does credit help you if you have accounts where you get cash back or airline miles or other things over time, and you make charges, get those benefits, and then pay them in full. Then it means you're not paying interest, doesn't cost you anything, but you're taking advantage of that. So it works both ways. But you have to pay at least the minimum due, or you'll have late payments reported to Experian. That's going to make it worse. So, Rich, got your first job 2 months ago. I can't seem to get a credit card. Yeah, and X-Man Zero, if you're just starting out, that can be a catch-22. It can be a little difficult. Be patient, and I got declined when I had my first real job when I went to buy a car because I hadn't been at the job long enough. That was the reason. So it happens. It takes time, and give it 5 or 6 months. Talk to your credit union or your bank about a security account. They may be willing to open an account to get you started, and then you can add Experian Boost potentially to your report. So the cell phone payments, utility payments, that might accelerate that a little bit for you too. Falling on debt will make getting a loan or mortgage very, very difficult. So certainly. So July Boy, you're correct. If you default on a debt, it's going to make it really hard to get any credit. You want to make sure you pay in full, or at least pay the minimum due at the least over time. So kind of the key. Thank you all so much for the questions. We're a little slow getting started. Then we had a real flurry at the end. I love having these conversations. I love sharing information with one another. The more we share with each other, the more people we help get the right information. And that's what we want to do. We want to help you use your credit report as a financial tool. We want to help you have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year financially as well. And make sure that you are more financially healthy by sharing information, because credit reporting and scoring in particular is so important in everybody's lives. It's not just about getting credit anymore, or accounts, or credit cards. It's about all sorts of aspects of your life, and we make sure that you understand it, use it well. So thank you so much. I will not be here Thursday. I'm going to be traveling again, but hope to be here a week from today. Be safe, everybody. Take care. Have a wonderful holidays. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.